friends, as you know, this is National Silent Movie Week, and we're very proud to have as our special guest today one of the truly great stars of the silent picture era. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Dick. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Now, tell us, if you will, what were some of the early silent motion pictures you appeared in?
Well, I was in Under Two Flags with Frank Gerritsen and Leonard Park, and The Crimson Crossing, starring Lillian Norell, Alexandra Brand, and myself. And perhaps my most famous role was in Lands Down Under, in which I played opposite Daniel Roster and the late, great Eileen Pennelly.
I see. And just how many silent movies would you estimate you were in altogether?
Oh, offhand, I'd say about 121 of them, Dick, starting around Tuesday, May 13th, 1908, up to and including 1927, the year that talkies took over.
121 pictures?
That's right, yeah.
Wow. Well, tell me this. What was it that made you give up your career in 1927 as you did?
Well, Dick, when talkies came in, I just figured I'd had it, that's all.
Mm-hmm. Well, was there any particular reason?
No, except that studio politics started to get way out of hand then, and I just simply refused to play their little game, if you know what I mean.
Oh, I do, and that's certainly admirable, too.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you very much, Miss Helen Loudermilk, for appearing on our show today.
Thank you, Dick.
There's no question about it. These unkind fates, this cruel society, is pursuing you, a sensitive, infinitely intelligent being, to the very edge of the abyss. There's no doubt about it. And you've come to the right spot. Friendly as we extend our hand in abject understanding and total perception of the fact that you, the beautiful people, have gathered and have come to the right place. Isn't it terrible there's so many rotten people in the world? So awful, so many awful people who don't understand really good, honest, real things. Terrible. Yes, you've got this golden keys of happiness. Bring it up there, Donald, please. Just a gigolo. Everywhere I go, people know the part I'm playing. Paid for every dance, selling each romance. Every night some heart betraying. There will come a day, youth will pass away. Then what will they say about me? When the end comes, I know they'll say just a gigolo as life goes on without me. Very good. I knew I'd milk that. Oh, man. Timing is of the essence. You notice that, baby? Nothing to it. Hold it there. Yes, of course, the straws in the wind department here, occasionally, can I mind if I rustle up the straws in the wind? You know, speaking of straws in the wind, everywhere you see, everywhere you look, animalophilia is beginning to sneak into our world. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about the anthropomorphism, which is something else again. This is animalophilia. This is people who are animal nuts. Now, that does not necessarily mean that they make the animal into a human being, which is Walt Disneyville. This is a Walt Disney syndrome. This is another thing entirely. Have you seen some of the new fantastic commercials that are on television that exploit animalophilia to its extremist sense? How about the one where you see this guy, and he's got a ruffly apron. You seen this guy? And he's in this kitchen. It's a typical East Side hippie sort of Vogue type kitchen. You can see the Russian kettles hanging from the walls and all. And he's going, oh, Tatya. He's got that swinging Westchester jaw, too, and a little slight Harvard accent. He's going, oh, won't the little darling love this? Oh, my, what the little darling is going, and just a little soup side of salt, oh, a little salty, malty, malty, and now a little pepper, ta-ta-ta, oh, that pepper grinder, la-ta-ta, oh, the little darling is going to love this beefaroni. And you think this guy is preparing a fantastic feast for his chick, who's about to come over to the pad for dinner. Oh, yeah, the little darling. Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, I can hardly wait till I see you. And then he takes the plate. He takes this French skillet full of meatballs sizzling and hissing, and he turns this, come and get it, darling. And the quick cut is to an Afghan hound. And so, oh, my little darling, talk about animalophilia. For those of you who don't know what's going on in New York, and good hot weather here in New York, especially over there in the East 50s, I am reminded once again of those faint odors, those faint aromas that used to come floating out of the stockyards on the south side of Chicago that made watching the Chicago White Sox a very special experience. You'd see that green miasma, that kind of soft aroma, that halo effect that hangs over 17 freight cars full of hogs come floating in over third base, and you knew that the afternoon was going to be like all other afternoons of defeat, despondent, slow swimming upstream against a turgid river containing an infinite variety of things, cabbages and kings. This was the world of the Chicago White Sox, and I'm reminded of that on hot days as I walk along over the East 50s, treading carefully. That the terrain on the East 50s is very, very difficult on hot afternoons. As far as the eye can see, Afghans. Corgis, isn't that what they call them? Or is it Congis or Whoopies? Corgis? I don't want to mispronounce the little darling's name properly. Everywhere, and you hear the twittering and the humming and the cooing of elderly ladies and tall, thin, willowy men wearing Italian skinny pants. All of them twittering and cooing to their little darlings. Incidentally, if you notice that part of this animalophilia is, part of it is the thing. You know how mothers invariably, a certain kind of mother, when a fist fight breaks out involving her kid, it's the other kid who's rotten. This is a special kind of mother. No matter what happens, the kid comes running up the front porch and, and he falls in the house, and immediately the mother says, who did it? Who did it? Tell me who did it. Just tell me who did it. And she goes running out there. What she doesn't know is that little Freddie had just committed a triple axe murder. And they are after him. Ma! Well, it doesn't make any difference with a certain kind of mother. If Freddie committed a triple axe murder, it's because they were rotten people and made him do it. And it's their fault anyway. Well, today I'm walking along the east side, and there are two thin, willowy gentlemen on each side of the sidewalk. One has a dachshund, and it's one of these little cross-eyed looking dachshunds with a tongue hanging down to the floor, the dumb-looking klutzy dog. And the other guy has one of these esoteric-looking, one of these very esoteric-looking dogs. I don't know, a cross between a congy and I think possibly a water rat, with a little touch of possum thrown in there, and little just a little touch of King Kong and possibly a girl he once knew in Teaneck. And there these two are, and this one guy, and these two little squirts, these little dogs are about the size of a teacup, you know. And and this, I'll tell you, it was a line it was right out of Philip Roth. It was right out of Salinger, except that they would have said it seriously, you see. It was right out of Updike, and I'm going to report it to you because I heard it in all of its purity. I am walking down the middle of the sidewalk, and here I am trapped between these two raging monsters. Total weight, roughly 7.5 ounces, you see. And they had the thin little silver chains, and one had little gold earrings on the dog, you know, and the other one had little rhinestone buckles and all kinds of jazz on it. And these two guys, both of them with shirts, you see, they're both on each side of the sidewalk. Wide sidewalk over there on 2nd Avenue. They were both glaring at each other. And these two little dogs were looking at each other at the end of their leashes. See, there was about 3 feet between them. They're like this, you know, they're insane. The little dachshund is reaching out with the paws, you know, wanting to tear the other one apart. And the little congy or whatever, corgi or whoopee or whatever it is, it's going, it's reaching out with its little claws. And the guy to my left, who had the little corgi or congy or whoopee, whatever it was, he says, "That's all right. That's the first time you've seen a vicious female." He says, "A vicious female." And, oh man, how symbolic can you get? And here this little squirt of a tiny toy dachshund was a vicious female. And of course, the dog that he had little tiny eyes that were speckled with pure vitriol. This was a deadly dog if I've ever seen one. Not capable of any damage, but had this dog had stainless steel fangs, the East Side would not be safe for pedestrians. It was going, he says, "Come on, dear, you're not used to vicious females." As though I am. Oh my, I certainly am. There's Mother, for example. Would you please bring that on? That's the Tennessee Williams syndrome in full flight in midsummer on the East Side. Come on, gang, let's go. Let Ben Gazzara try that. You know, this syndrome, though, of the animal Ophelia is becoming very... There is an ad. Who's got the current New Yorker with him? You got it downstairs, Lee? Can you run down and get it? Yeah, I'll run down and get it and talk about the reversal of the roles and all the rest of it. You get hurry down and get that thing, and while you're doing that, you keep Tiger Rag up there, Don. We got to have that. Here, for example, in Deer Abbey is another example. Little things are floating down, you know, like it's like monster dandruff somewhere. There is a monster that's controlling the whole shebang, and it's got problems. Listen, Dear Abby, Dear Abby, my French poodle is going to be 4 years old next Sunday. I would like to give her a surprise birthday party and invite some of her little playmates. Cherie isn't just an ordinary dog. She's an aristocrat, and I have the papers to prove it. What should I serve? Have you any cute original ideas for a party of this time? Cherie's Madame. Well, how do you think Abby answers that? Well, Abby plays it straight. She says, "Dear Madame, if you really want to put on the dog, make it black tie. Serve a birthday cake made of ground sirloin and decorate it with crushed dog biscuits. And as for Cherie's papers, you just better put them on the floor." Give it to him, Abby. Gee, why is it that last line reminds me? This is WOR, AM and FM, New York. This is Friendly Fred here. Would you please touch the money button there? Mr. Leader likes. Go ahead. There we go. Very good.
Miller High Life in Pop and Pour cans. Distinctive Miller High Life in pop cans. Just pop and pour Miller High Life, the champagne of bottled beer. No opener needed. And inside every can, enjoy the hearty yet light goodness of Miller High Life, brewed from a century-old recipe, only in Milwaukee. Miller High Life always gives you that perfect taste in beer every time. Always a bright, clear taste. Unequaled, unquestioned, unchanging. Now you can enjoy refreshing Miller High Life in pop and pour cans. Pop and pour Miller High Life. Always sparkling, flavorful, distinctive. Now in pop and pour cans.
You know, I miss something, Don. I have to admit it. Ever since they put this transcription on, I miss those wonderful old stories that the Miller people used to send down for me to talk about. You know, that musty old castle where they originally made Miller High Life. Do you remember that? Musty old castle. Indeed. You know, speaking of musty old... Very good. Thank you, baby. Very good. I have a fantastically efficient staff. Dynamic boy, leaping toward. While we're looking for this ad in the current issue of the New Yorker, I'll tell you, if you will look on the page, I'll let you hold on there for a second. I'll contemplate this. Talk about the reversal of the roles. And, no, I'm not going to show it to you. You're going to have to be surprised. And while you're waiting here, let's do a little Peugeot business here. Peugeot is the car, according to a current ad. Incidentally, it is true. The car that has been dominating the world's roughest rallies the last couple of years. You know, the rally, that reminds me. Immediately after this commercial, Don, will you please remind me to talk about a rally? For those of you who know anything about rallies, you understand, of course, that the East African rally is the world's worst. 3,000 miles over East Africa. And if you think driving over some of the Long Island roads is rotten, if you think 6th Avenue is tough at rush hour, Dad, you ought to drive. You know that one of my friends almost got killed driving in a car in East Africa in the middle of the jungle, and there wasn't another car within 17,000 miles. He hit the only other car in the jungle, head on. Just like that. They both came around the curve. Boom! 2 months in the hospital in the Belgian car. True? It's a true story. Not inventing this. Anyway, let's talk about the Peugeot. Last year, 16 cars finished this rally. 85 started, and 5 of the cars that finished were Peugeots. This is a fantastic automobile. I drove one for 5 years myself, and it's one of the best cars I've ever owned. And I have owned, let's see, probably 25 automobiles. What a sickness. I'll tell you, cars are like women. Every time you get one, you want another one. And a new one, I can appoint, which is even sicker. Oh, wow. This is Peugeot, 2 East 46th Street. They make it. It's a fine car. It's French, and I'm not pronouncing it correctly. Not because I'm anglicizing it, because I'm terrible in French. Now, let's see. You want to hear about a rally? Yeah. This is something I want to throw in here. This is the 9th year now, Dan List and myself officiated at a rally. It's the closest thing to a tradition that the Village Voice has got. And for those of you who are looking for something to do Sunday morning, something that has a certain surrealistic nuttiness about it, I would suggest that you come down to Washington Square. Now, this is it's not going to cost you anything. I would suggest you come down to Washington Square. On the east side of Washington Square is University Place. Now, sometimes they call it Washington Square East, but it really is the foot of University Place, over on the east side. Washington Square is right in the heart of Manhattan. And all you do is drive straight down Fifth Avenue, if you don't know anything about it. Just drive straight down Fifth Avenue, and you'll hit Washington Square head on. And like as not, if I know anything about Washington Square on Sunday, it'll hit you head on. There are more fistfights per square inch in Washington Square than any place in New York on Sunday. The fuzz, everybody's out there. Now, over on the east side of Washington Square, at 11 a.m., you will find the Greenwich Village Sports Car Rally with me standing on the hood of a 1933 Hupmobile, wearing a yachting cap, exhorting the crowd to further madness. Standing behind me will be Dan List, the editorial editor. He's the editor of the automotive column of the Village Voice, and we will be engaged in the 9th consecutive unsuccessful running of the Greenwich Village Sports Car Rally. It will be 2 hours. Now, this is a kind of anti-rally rally, in case you're interested. This is a 2-hour metropolitan rally in which all the drivers drive through the great roars of the crowd, and they have a number on the side of their car, and they're given checkpoints all over New York City. They all wild places down in the Battery and uptown, Washington Heights, and so on. And 2 hours later, if they complete the rally, they wind up at the Limelight on 7th Avenue South, and we go in and have, yelling. People come, women get hysterical, and it's terrible. We usually have a nurse on duty down there and all that sort of thing, and a lot of little kids in short pants come over and say, Mr. Shep, he's had a real beard, and they pull and all that stuff. Terrible thing. Whole thing is a ridiculous fiasco, but it's part of the pop art world of our time. And if you want to come down and be part of this, it is going to be this Sunday at 11 a.m., okay? The rally sponsored by the village. Oh, if you want to enter, now here's one thing. If you want to drive, you don't have to be a great driver. In fact, the worst drivers always win this thing, which is a little ironical. I'll never forget a friend of mine. One night I was going to go down to this rally. They have a big cup. It really is a big deal, They have a big cup, and they have the guy's name inscribed, and it's kind of a traditional thing. And one night, a friend of mine, the night before, I said, I'm going to this rally. And he said, I'll come over there and watch it. So the next morning, he arrived in his little car, which was a terrible, rotten automobile, one of the worst cars ever built. A mid-European automobile, we won't even mention it. It had lead wheels. Awful car. It was the only half-cylinder motor I know of around. This car, everything was dripped oil as he drove it down the street. He had to keep pushing it with his foot to get it started, that kind of thing, out the door, And he comes down there and with his mother-in-law sitting in the back seat, who weighed 722 pounds. And his wife is sitting next to him. They come down the street. And somebody put a number on the side of his car. It was a foreign car, so automatically he's an entrant. He says, no, I'm they says, all right, next in line, get going. He drives out. 25 minutes and an hour and a half later, he wins the Silver Cup. And he has not been back since, which bugged the whole crowd because it was a cup that was supposed to go from winner to winner. They haven't found him yet. He took off. But if you'd like to enter, call the Village Voice tomorrow at Watkins 44669. After 9 o'clock, and ask for Dan List. Now, it doesn't make any difference what kind of car you have. If you want to enter this thing, they're particularly interested in cars. If you have an old Essex, great, they'd love to have. And by the way, down at the sports car rally, there will be a lot of classic cars on display down there. There's a couple of Duesenbergs. There'll be one of the old wind-driven Maytags, the only car that was on the road ever that used sails. Did you know that they had an automobile that was put on the market that had a sail and had an auxiliary sail? And this will be on display down there, and it will be driven by the original owner, who's 140. And it's an exciting world, I'll tell you. All right, now let's see. That's Peugeot. Now, one other thing we have to conclude here. It's funny scene about this animal world. Do you want to know about you want to hear about this piece in the New Yorker? All right. I would suggest any of you who want the Boff of the Week to pick up your current copy of the New Yorker, July 31st. I always say that there is an unconscious truth in the things we do in an unself-conscious way. Now, when a guy is sitting down to write a play, he is self-conscious. Immediately, all the things that he is supposed to believe come out. That doesn't mean he really believes them in life. That's what confuses people about writers constantly. And about people who are editorialists, one thing and another. On one hand, they will talk about peace. They'll talk about the beauty of the human soul. They will constantly berate and bewail the fact that there are cruel people in the world and evil people. And at the same time, they themselves spend their time stabbing their girlfriends and wives with 7-inch shivs. Now that confuses people. It really does. Many times you will see on television, you'll see in a roundtable discussion in the David Susskind tradition, you'll see some author who claims he's of the people. He has written great books, raising to the sky the noble savage. He has talked about the wonderful little man. And the next thing you know, you see him on TV, and he says, well, of course, David, as far as I say, well, of course, when I went to Yale, you find out he's totally the opposite of what he claims he is, or at least what you think his books are about. I wonder how many kids who think if they ran into J.D. Salinger on the street, Salinger would be a 16-year-old kid with pimples. And he'd grab and say, hey, man, come on, let's put on our honey caps and let's go out the corner like that. Let's go, kids. Wow. I'm sorry. I am S-O-R-Y-E. Sorry. Now, I think just like this, in the world of the unconscious creation, you'll often find the greatest truth. Merely because the guy is not concerned with values that he thinks he should believe in. He is just working. In other words, the working thing often is the thing which is the thing that ultimately is the truth about a society. I doubt very much whether we will find. I suspect that if our museums right now were to be preserved, if somehow you could pour a polyethylene film, put them in mothballs like they do the mothball fleet, just seal them up and pump all the air out of them and make sure that no humidity gets into them. And 2,000 years from now, they were to split this thing open, I suspect they would learn absolutely nothing about our society. Nothing at all. On the other hand, if they were to find 45 copies of the Saturday Evening Post, 17 copies of Playboy in full flight, they would know about our society. Far more than if they were to some very important novel by, say, William Faulkner, or some very important novel by Catherine Ann Porter. I suspect this, and I'm going to continue to suspect it, because, now that's not to say there's more truth in these people who write the junk, these people who are involved. They're unself-conscious, and hence are perhaps more truthful. And they don't even know about truth. They're just writing it, they're just putting it down, they're laying it out. I wonder whether or not, what would be more, this is a rhetorical question here, what would be more valuable to a man who wants to know about a society, let's say ours? The Museum of Modern Art, I'm talking about 2,000 years from now, which is supposed to represent the flower of our creativity. Now, is an artist supposed to comment on a society? Is he supposed to record it? Is he supposed to make it understandable? To whom, then, I ask? That's a good question. Now, 2,000 years from now, if they dig up Andy Warhol, are they going to know much about our time? I wonder. I really seriously wonder. Now, on the other hand, I suspect that if they could find maybe 27 cubic yards of the Bronx City dump, they would know. They would seriously, really know. To begin with, they would find 847 million used Miller High Life cans. Immediately they know here was a beer-swigging population. I mean, immediately, here's a crowd that swilled beer. They would find 422 old back copies of TV Guide with the Who on the cover, Kukla, Fran, and Ollie, maybe. But the facts of the matter are, by looking at these truly unprepossessing pieces of business that we turn out, you would find out about our time. Now look at this ad now. This tells a lot about our world. I would suggest you get out your current copy of the New Yorker, and right opposite the Talk of the Town page. The Talk of the Town begins on page 23 is the Talk of the Town. They don't have it numbered, but it is page 23. Right opposite that is a fantastic picture. And it starts out and says, there is a certain kind of woman. Holy smokes, and how? Whose name is George. Now that chick, now I hold this up. I'm not even going to, it doesn't matter whose ad it is. But the point is that this girl is in exactly the same situation. She's in the same setting and has the same attitude of a male of about 8 years ago in the ads, including even the artifacts around her. Do you notice the dog she's with? These are not girl dogs. These are what they used to call male, masculine. These are hunting dogs. Obviously, these are, what are they? They look like Dalmatians, aren't they? Or setters, some kind of a hunting dog. But obviously, they're field dogs. These are not lap dogs. These are not little she French poodles. These are the kind of dogs you used to see pictures, with Cary Grant surrounded by this type of dog wearing a tweedy jacket. Now, do you notice what she's stepping out of? Well, she's stepping out of a very hairy racing-type automobile. Now, there is no male in the picture, so it's obvious that she is the one who's operating this equipment. It's exactly the kind of picture that you used to see a male in about 5 or 6 years ago. Now, notice the look on her face. Notice everything about her. Can you imagine cuddling that chick? Seriously, no, that's a good question. And that relates to what I was talking to you last night about. Can you imagine cuddling her? Now, I would like to point out the hair she's wearing. Now, that's pure Tom Jones and a yard wide. Look carefully at it. Really. And you'll see so much about our society. Now, 50 years from now, of course, they'll dig this out. Look at this, and they will know that something happened in the 60s. Merely by relating this to a picture of the same situation that was done in the 50s, in the mid-50s. They can see a vast and fantastically sweeping change coming over the society. Now, there are other things. Of course, the New Yorker to me is one of the great telltale objet d'art of our world. How many times have you picked up the New Yorker and you dive into it, and the next thing you know, you find yourself with that little vague buzzing sound in your ears? You're reading about another Indian lady who is once again reminiscing about her Indian girlhood. Or you're reading another Irish lady reminiscing about her Irish girlhood. Or you're reading a thin, tall gentleman reminiscing about his Connecticut boyhood. it goes on and on and on. And you wonder where it'll ever end. Well, who knows? Whether it'll ever end, what difference does it make? The fact is, it's part of I think of a great evolutionary change coming over our world and our time, which is not being recorded, literally not being recorded, possibly because we're all involved in it. It's very hard, I wonder whether a guy at the time of the Renaissance wrote much about the fantastic Renaissance that was going on. All he knew was that he had an itch, that's all. And other guys were yelling, "Oh, cut out with the pictures, will you?" This one. Did a man at the time of the Industrial Revolution, when it was really did he know he was involved in a vast, fantastic, sweeping... No, not the individual, I suspect. Occasionally, one or two guys flying high over society, like vultures or eagles, whichever way you prefer to look at it. These guys did. They kept saying, this is a fantastic thing going on. And yet, during great sweeping moments in history, very few, even of the most astute people, recognize that such is happening. I'll never forget reading the intro, the first paragraphs, the first few opening sentences in a novel by Stendhal, Henri Beyle, the famous French writer who was famed for his realism, by the way. It's a curious thing. He was famed for his realism. He was famed for his psychological insight. They said that he was one of the first guys, as a matter of fact, the forerunner to Freud himself. And so here was Stendhal. He opened it up, and he was talking. He was saying, "Dear reader of 1931." He was writing this in 1831. He was, "Dear reader of 1931, you won't believe what it's like now at this time." Of course, obviously not. And he wrote this novel. Now, he also kept a journal where he wrote about his problems writing, you see. And he wrote on during this particular novel that he was constantly being bothered, this famous writer. He was constantly being bothered because outside of his study where he was writing, there was a constant uproar going on. People were yelling and hollering, and they were shooting at each other. He says, if they'd only cut out that racket, I could get on with my book. It was the French Revolution. And to him, there was just a lot of racket going on out there, a lot of sore heads and fat heads going on and on. And he didn't really relate to this. He didn't see this scene happening. Now, this is a great man of his time. So if he didn't dig it, what do you think the slob on the street was doing? The slob on the street was just walking around scratching and spitting once in a while. That's about the extent of it. I've talked to people who were in countries. It doesn't make any difference what country, but I can name several. In countries at the time, tremendous events occurred. I mean things which will be recorded in history for 10,000 years and more. And the one thing that they have in common when you talk to them is that they didn't know it was happening. They were very confused about it all. And they're the last guys you can ask about it, actually. Have you ever talked to anybody who was in Germany at the time Hitler was rising? Hey, he's just a nut. There's a kook down the street there. And they never heard about him until one day he was elected, and the next thing you know, they're all off running tanks somewhere on the tundra. And they didn't know it happened or what was going on until it was all over. Most of them, many of them. I'm not taking anybody off the hook, but this is true. In our time, for example, there's no one can deny that there has been, since World War II, tremendous and sweeping sexual and moral and sociological changes. Of course, they're all the same, really. They're all bound up, so you can't really subdivide them into separate little classifications. And yet, I'll guarantee you, there are probably in this country, out of 100 people walking around the streets, there are possibly 65 to 70 who, one, don't know anything's happened. Two, if they do think anything's happened, they'll say, we'll get back to normal. Don't worry, it's all the same. I believe that everything, everybody goes through cycles and the law. And the third group who feel that by yelling loud enough, it'll stop. Those are the three different nations I find among the... Oh, and of course there is a fourth group. And this is a very special group. This is the group that gets highly indignant if you ever point out that anything has happened. And somehow blame you for it happening because you're pointing it out. That goes back to an old folk problem. How many of us grew up in families who believed that Uncle Charlie died only after they took him to the doctor and they started to fool around with him? In other words, they blamed Uncle Charlie's death on the doctor. This is something perhaps that's more common in that great inverted bowl of darkness, the Middle West out there, than it is here, although I don't suppose it is too uncommon. Is it? Do they say that kind of stuff around here? Don, many times. I remember my aunts all sitting around and clucking, they'd cluck and eat the bridge mix, and they're all playing bingo or whatever that, bunco, that was the game. They have a bell, they keep hitting, bunco, they holler, and they're all sitting around, and they were clucking and yelling. And the reason they were clucking, I'm a little kid, I'm fooling around under the daybed, and my kid brother's over behind the radiator whimpering, and, life is going on. And I can remember my Aunt Teresa saying, "That's all right, I don't care what you say, Min." Min was her younger sister, whom she always ran over like a steamroller, see. That was my mother's second sister. And I don't care, Min, I don't care what they say. Ma was all right until she went to see Dr. Slicker. I know those. I don't trust those people. What do they know? As a matter of fact, the only thing they can think of is cut them open. Yeah, you can't trust. Well, I'm a kid, laying there under the daybed. And so I'm sure that millions of people grew up with a sneaking suspicion that trouble did not end in hospitals, it began. That trouble did not end in doctors' offices. That's where you found it. And so even today, as a matter of fact, there's a reverse thing now that's going on. How many of you have watched these medical shows on television? Have you ever seen anybody come in with anything that wasn't serious? No wonder people are getting scared of doctors. One of them, the doctor, and he says, listen, we call this the Casey syndrome. And I said, what's the Casey syndrome? He says, well, people watch television and everybody has got a disease out of which they will never recover. He says, not only that, they've always got a disease that only one man in the world can cure them. It's Casey. And he says, everybody comes walking in. He says, there I am. I'm a little short, fat guy. I'm not Casey. So automatically they think I can't cure them. They keep looking for Casey. Where's that angry doctor that comes in and says, I don't care what you say, doctor. I'm going to operate. I'm responsible. The next thing you know. So he says the Casey syndrome is the syndrome that many people have developed from watching television, that there's no such thing as a harmless disease. There's no such thing. Wouldn't it be great once if this guy comes into Casey one time and he's worried, he's sweating, and oh boy, he's just terrible symptoms. And Casey sits down and says, all right now, you're going to have to be truthful with me. You know how Casey's always yelling at people. You're going to have to be truthful with me. Come on now. I don't have time to fool with you. You're like every other patient. And I say to you, you can either live or die when you walk into this office. And if you're going to live, you're going to tell me the truth. If you're going to die, that's your business. All right, Miss Barber, wheel in the scalpel. Well, all right, he sits there and says, well, Dr. Casey, I don't know how to express it. It's terrible. I wake up nights and I turn. I got this pain down here in my... Could it be cancer, doctor? I get this pain down here in my gut. Every morning I sat there today in the office and it began to build up bigger. Oh, doctor, sit down! Strip. There's Casey, see. And then the announcer says, we'll be back with Ben Casey in just 1 minute. But first, a word from Whoopies. And then there's a 1 minute spot, see. And then it comes in and you see the lights. It dials in the lights. The machines are going. And you see Casey with his white coat. He's looking at the patient that's stretched out. And the patient says, oh, doctor, please, don't tell Madge. Madge's heart is weak and she couldn't stand it. Oh, I know what's wrong with me. It's all right, doctor. You can be truthful with me, but don't tell Madge. And Casey looks at him and says, all right. Sit up. Turn up the lights, Miss Barber. Okay. I'm going to lay it out to you straight. You know what your trouble is, Jackson? What? Oh, please, doctor, please don't tell Madge. Don't, please. All right, Jackson. You know what your trouble is? I'm going to talk out plain and straight. I'm going to lay it down. Tight BVDs. Bum. Yes, the case of Jackson and the tight underwear was solved once again by Dr. Ben Casey, who realized immediately that his pain was coming from the elastic band that pressed into his liver. Wouldn't that be a great series right there? Real problems. Do you realize that I have a friend? I'll tell you a true story. I had a friend that thought he was getting cancer. True, I'm telling you a true story. And he went out and he crept around and he got all these little fly-by-night insurance companies, where you can buy $5 million worth of insurance with no examination. He bought millions of dollars worth of this. Now, I'm telling you a true story. He was scared. Oh, boy, he walked around and he sweated and he cried. And gradually, everybody around him convinced him that he ought to go to the doctor. He'd seen plenty of Casey series, He saw plenty of Medic. He knew what cancer was like. He knew those sudden shooting pains deep down inside that you can't quite localize. He knew he had it. There was no question about it. And one day he says, all right, get off my back. I'll go find out. 45 minutes later, he came back with a funny look on his face. They traced it to his car. His front car seat was jabbing him right to the left of his spine, and it was giving him an ache that went from the top of his head all the way down to his feet. It was his car that was doing to him. And so, would Casey ever bring that kind of a case out? I doubt it very much. And that's what's known as the Casey syndrome over here at University Hospital. And they can tell a Casey syndrome patient when he comes walking in. He's got a kind of vague halo-like look around the eyes from hours of sitting in front of the tube. He's got the wide, dilated irises of a man who is accustomed to a 21-inch world. And he comes in there vaguely groping because he's in the daytime for the first time in years. Immediately somebody says, here comes Casey. Watch out. Watch out. And all the doctors, by the way, are working on techniques to overcome that. They're working on scowls. They're working on leers. Many of them are taking voice lessons. I know one guy who's studying with Stella Adler. They're working out their best way they can find to deal with the Casey patients. Oh, by the way, most of their doctors' rooms now are being lit by Gene Rosenthal. So the guy knows he's in a real operating room.
This is WOR Radio, your station for news.